cards in and out there protesting in the riots and the Brixton riots, and there's a different way for me. I think partly for me as well is because I was incarcerated as a young person, and I there's a part of me which is like, oh, I've done that. I don't want to be incarcerated again. I know what it's like to be incarcerated. I know what it's like to be in solitary confinement. I was incarcerated from the age of 15 to 17 and a half. I grew up in orphanages, was a street kid, pickpocketing, I mean, it's very easy once you're in the system, once you're in group homes, and if you get into trouble to be incarcerated, that's a trajectory. But for me, I really, this book, I'm Still Your Negro, was a real response to 2015, when there was just a whole slew of black people being killed by the police. It was almost like every day I was waking up to somebody being killed by the police. And I think white people don't get it. They think, well, you're not in America, you're not in England. How does it impact you? It happens in Canada. We have black people who are killed by the police in Canada, Indigenous people who are killed by the police. But for me, it just takes me back to that roots moment when that black kid is strung up and the white master is whipping him and saying, what's your name? Kunta, what's your name? Kunta, what's your name? Kunta. And it just takes me back to that moment. It's that intergenerational trauma. Yeah. When I went to watch Harriet, I went along to watch Harriet. So I sit in the cinema. 5 minutes in, every cell of mine was traumatized. My teeth chattered throughout the whole play. It was as if the blood drained from me. It was just this genetic memory. Yeah. And I just wasn't even expecting it. It was like, I'm going to watch Harriet, blah, blah, blah. But just this genetic memory in the body. And every time somebody black is killed by the police, there's a genetic memory.
It's the same feeling. And I think also with that is that there's this interconnection with all of us as black people that I don't think white people have. There's this belonging. We come from ancestrally something. We come from Africa. We have bloodlines that we share, and we're a web. And people who have extracted themselves from their own mother country can't relate. So I don't know these people, but they're still my family. That could have been my sister, that could have been my brother, that could have been my lover, that could have been anything part of me. It could have been me. And a lot of people don't understand that. So I'm right here with you. How did you find Buddhism, or how did it find you?
Well, I mean, I would say it on a particular level, it's not one of these kind of amazing stories, because I always laugh because there were the bad girls and the good girls. I was out clubbing. I was out clubbing and doing everything which goes with clubbing. And I used to go clubbing with a really good friend of mine. And she was dating somebody who was Buddhist. So, hanging out with my black friend, and she was dating a black woman who was Buddhist. And there was something about her, and she won't mind me mentioning Amragita is her name now. There was something about Amragita, how she held herself. And I remember thinking, I want a bit of that. There was just something about her that I want a bit of that. But we were so polarized at that time. And anyway, she had this story that I'd slept with her girlfriend. So do you know what I mean? I wasn't going to be in the input. And the story that I was kind of misguiding her girlfriend because, you know, her girlfriend at the time was, you know, I'd say kind of pretty alcoholic, you know, and I was pretty into my drugs and whatever. So it was, and we would laugh. We would say, that's what the good girls go and do, go off and meditate. So, this is about 25 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago. So there used to be an offering, you know, the time of consciousness raising groups. So there would be meditation for Black women. Yeah. And also for me, I think there was a part of me that didn't think that I could fit in that part because although I was Black, I didn't grow up within Black culture. I grew up within white culture, and that does separate you apart, especially when you're a lot younger. But then I went off. I worked as an international correspondent covering Aboriginal deaths in custody, Aboriginal land rights out in Australia. And I came back, and there were two things that happened. There was one thing, I bumped into an old friend in a nightclub, and she was going along to meditation, a Black friend. And then I had another friend said, you've always wanted to meditate. And basically I started meditating, and I could really, I was one of those people who had beginner's mind. It was like, oh my God, this is the best drug I've ever had. I feel high. It doesn't cost anything. I feel good. It's not illegal. So, you know, I can remember during the millennium, and my mates were saying, this is because then when I was living in the UK is a real kind of party place. I mean, once upon a time, if I was coming home at 10 o'clock in the morning, that was a bad night of raving. Right? Oh, wow. So, yeah, that's how we rave back there. And I can remember my friends telling me all the parties they were going to go to during the millennium. And I remember thinking, and the drugs they were going to have, I'm going to go on retreat for 3 weeks over the millennium because I know I'm going to get high. You know? Yeah. So really, it was the practice of meditation that drew me to Buddhism. And I think this is, again, what's really important for any of the Black community that is listening, is that meditation doesn't have to be associated with Buddhism. The Christian mystics use meditation, and meditation, that was my therapy. It was where I really unraveled a lot of stuff. It's where I did a lot of healing. It's where I learned to love myself. And this is the secularized mindfulness that we can offer to our community, because it can transform lives. I mean, for me, I wanted to take it further. In a way, we have this thing, well, you let go of these labels, so why call yourself a Buddhist? For the sake of this conversation, yes, I am a Buddhist, but I really want to say that I dedicate my life to just living more ethically, living more compassionately, living more mindfully, living the life of the Noble Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths. So in a way, it was in my Black community, and then it was in that queer. Well, then it would have been called the lesbian community, the Black lesbian community. So it was under my nose. I can always remember my really good friend Zenobi. And when Ruth would have been alive, Zenobi would be going off. And we're going off to meditate, and we'd say, we're just going to stay in a house and party and drink our punch and blah, 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 and everything. And then one day it was like, when this teacher, that was it, I had this transcendental teacher that I went to, he left. And then it was like, well, I know people who go along to the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, which is what it was called, Sri Ratna Buddhist Community. I know that, so I'll go along. So in a way, really, I would say that it was one of the things that saved my life. If I look at what's the things that saved my life, music, most definitely music, and being in the nightclub saved my life. Meditation was another thing that really saved my life, and Buddhism. Yeah.
And would you also say writing has saved your life in a way?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's a great question, because I can remember that was it. Coming out of Borstal, it was called Borstal, and going to college. I was very lucky. Foster mother took me in, put me through college, etc. And I can remember the joy of cramming information and then writing it down. The joy of having this information crammed in my mind and then writing it down. And I suppose, I mean, definitely being a journalist took me to, I lived out in Australia for a couple of years. And in fact, I would have gone out to South Africa to cover what was happening out there. But the British government had put this embargo and said no journalists could actually go into South Africa. So I think in a way being a journalist definitely provided me to see something other, provided me to see a different world. And it was that experience of, I had the experience to live with the Yolngu. The Yolngu live right up in the tip. There's a couple of tips in Australia, right up in the Northern Territories in Yirrkala. And I got to live traditionally there for several months, and that was a turning around for me in my life. I knew I couldn't appropriate their culture, and I'm smiling because the two things I can remember, I was a pale black, like look how dark I am, and it's like I'm being called pale. I mean, please, I've never been called pale in my life before. Right. You know, I've been called coolie because my hair's got the Indian mix in it, but not light pale. And the other thing was, where was I indigenous to? That was confused. Wow. hadn't even really heard of the word indigenous, and this was with the elders, because it was the elders who had managed to get the land back, who spoke the English, and I was like, indigenous, what the hell did that mean? And today, and I in my most recent book, I refer to myself as a stateless indigenous person, because I have no idea where I'm indigenous to.
Wow.
And I have no idea because of slavery.
Yeah. My mind is blown with that. Like, where am I indigenous to? Like, there's it's so hard and complicated because of the disruption.
Yeah.
Wow. So tell me more about your current book that you have released. I guess you already told me the idea. I guess what was that initial moment that you're like, this is it, this has to come out and this has to be shared?
I wrote, some of the work is newer than some of the work, and some of the work is very new, and I think it was the muse that spoke to me. I actually went back to Sierra Leone and went into the area of Kono. That's where the diamonds are, looking for diamonds. And I had the opportunity to interview rebels, ex-rebels, and do all that interviewing. And at the same time, I was really interested in the spirituality, and I got to learn about the supreme being Yatta. And it was Yatta who spoke through me, in a way. So in a way, the inspiration came through the voice of Yatta, and we hear the voice of Yatta through each section. So in a way, for me, it's the voice of Yatta. I wasn't writing Yatta. Yatta was writing itself. And in a way, it's a commentary, I think. It's definitely a commentary, and it's a good question. It was really important for me to write. One of the poems, another one, Bite the Dust, that took me 4 years to write. I wrote it last year, and it was something that I it was like